Like a dog in the street.
Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go. Woo!
And a happy Thorsday to all who celebrate. We got a lot to get to on this Thorsday edition of Purple Daily. We have an announcement, if you missed it on social media yesterday, that we will get to. What people are saying about JJ McCarthy and some Ask Thor Anything stuff here. But two quick things before we start. Tonight, we are going to be, it's our next Purple Daily Unplugged event this evening, starting at 6 p.m.-ish, and then we'll start podcasting around 6:30 at Buffalo Wild Wings in Roseville. And we do encourage people to arrive early if you can, traffic and the like. But B-Dubs is going to have some BOGO specials on boneless wings, $4 Coors Lights, $4 Miller Lights. 5 lucky winners are going to get a Pepsi tailgate kit. You can find out more information about tonight, scorenorth.com/Pepsi. But we're looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible. It's open to the public. Let's talk some Vikings. Let's commiserate. Let's watch some Thursday night football at Buffalo Wild Wings in Roseville tonight, 6 o'clock. And also a shout out to MSP Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, Judd.
Absolutely. And, folks, I have been talking about the heating part of this for quite a while. So I'm going to turn to the plumbing part because right now, my friends at MSP are offering a free camera inspection for your drain if you mention my name or the show Purple Daily. If you are dealing with those persistent clogs in your drains, slow draining sinks or toilets, or you're in an older house, much like the sports dad, a free inspection now can avoid issues before they happen. They can save you a lot of cash too. Also, MSP continuing to do a great work in the community, which they take a lot of pride in. Their HVAC and plumbing technicians are collecting non-perishable food donations right now during their visits. It's a great way for you and for them to give back. For info on contacting them to set up a visit, go to their website, callmsp.com. Give them a call, 651-615-4292. MSP also is your local Carrier dealer, so check them out to learn more about Carrier products.
All right, we have some breaking news here, breaking show news, breaking Score North news. If you maybe missed it on social media yesterday, but I think it's been like 3 years that Thor has been a regular on these Thorsday episodes and just doing a lot of draft contributions for us here at Score North and on Purple Daily. And we got talking over the last few weeks, months, and started just poking around at, would you ever like to be part of not just like our Thorsday episodes, but would you ever want to be like on the Score North team? It's been a minute since we've added a full-time extra person to our team. We've been building this thing for 5 or 6 years with mostly the small team of Judd and myself and Declan and then AJ Fredrickson and Ross Brendel in the background. We have a wonderful supporting team that helps connect with advertisers and whatnot. But we can announce as of yesterday, Score North has reached a multi-year contract with noted NFL draft expert, connoisseur of Tuesday night maction, and a JJ McCarthy propagandist, Thory Nystrom. Welcome aboard full-time to Score North.
Yes.
You get the flag. You get the flag, baby. You get the flag. There it is.
There's a lot more to discuss here. We're gonna launch new shows in December. Thor's gonna have a continued and beefed up presence on Purple Daily. But, dude, we are super pumped to bring you in, not just once a week on Thursdays, but to have you part of what we're building here on a full-time basis. We couldn't be more excited, man.
I'm jacked to be here. Yeah, it's this is what I've always wanted to do, and the fact that it worked out, I couldn't be more tickled. I'm a kid from Brainerd, grew up obsessed with all the Minnesota sports teams, grew up obsessed with the Vikings, the NFL draft. So to get to do it full-time is a dream come true.
Awesome. Hold on a second. You didn't tell me round 2 was coming. You didn't tell me round 2 was coming.
Where else would you rather be?
That's right.
Than
That's right.
Here, right now.
Right here, right now.
6-4.
6-4 would be better.
6-4. That's where I'd prefer to be right now. No offense, Thor, but I prefer to be 6-4, and I'd be making this announcement right now.
100%.
So, yeah, plenty more to come on that, and you're going to be hanging out with us at Buffalo Wild Wings in Roseville tonight, too, for the Unplugged event, and we're all just super pumped. But let's get into the show here, and let's get into what people are saying about JJ McCarthy. There's just been a lot of talk and noise and reaction off these last couple games. And I want to throw a couple quotes out from Kevin O'Connell to start with. He said on KFXN radio a couple days ago, coming up on his 6th start now, I think we're all just looking for continued evidence of the growth. We got to start seeing the cement dry on some of the things we've really worked hard on to make football habits for him from a fundamentals and technique standpoint. And then he added to the assembled media yesterday. He talked about there being messy pockets sometimes. I thought the protection was actually pretty good for chunks of that Bears game, but that every game in the NFL there's going to be a messy pocket. The guys that have really excelled, and he has an aside that he was talking to Tom Brady about this last week. A messy pocket doesn't necessarily mean it's a broken pocket. You're protected, but it could be considered messy. But those are winning downs by his teammates that we've got to equal that with a winning down out of the quarterback. When you hear that from Kevin O'Connell, what do you make of it starting with Thor?
Young quarterbacks don't fail organizations. Organizations fail young quarterbacks. It seems like every little thing that goes wrong, it's the young quarterback's fault. When this was a scenario where it was supposed to be, a championship roster that he was stepping into that was going to elevate the kid, and it's like when things go wrong with the offense, it feels like a lot of people are really quick to point fingers at him as the cause why. He didn't drop the 6 passes. He had 6 off-target throws, but there was another 6 that were dropped. Putting it all on he can't do kick coverage either at the end. It feels another one like it's JJ's fault for me.
Boy, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. It is a situation where and we talked about this. In some ways, I think that the loss to the Bears is almost good because now your playoff chances are in the toilet, which allows you to play him and he just needs to play. I think there's a lot of disconnects here now in retrospect. I think there's a disconnect between what O'Connell expected from McCarthy, what McCarthy is capable of. I think there's a disconnect in the coaching McCarthy received as a quarterback to what the Vikings wanted, which is sort of odd. Like we're talking about, Chip and I talked about this on Purple Access today. We've literally spent a month now talking about mechanics and fundamentals. Like things that you would expect to talk about in college, not the pros. I can't ever remember this much talk about your fundamentals and mechanics being poor and screwed up. And McCarthy yesterday talked about rewiring his neurological pathways to learn how to play quarterback here. So it feels like at the end of the day, there was a large disconnect between anticipation, what was expected, what was thought, and the reality. I will say this. The cynic in me thinks that some of this is being put out there to cover up for the fact that they think there's now things that aren't fixable and they're trying to buy themselves time. But this feels like it's turned into a whole thing that I certainly didn't expect.
Let me give you that full quote from JJ McCarthy here real quick. So he said, I was taught how to play quarterback in a very different way. It's really hard. You're rewiring neurological pathways, and that's not something that happens overnight. I kind of make the analogy of just a cork about to come off a bottle, just understanding that it's 1 to 3 little things that I need to change about my game that's going to make a huge difference in the outcome of every single drive in the game. So yeah, I feel like it's really close, but it all comes down to the consistency of the fundamentals. And Kevin O'Connell talked about having a more repeatable top of your drop. But you've been scouting his tape since college, and we had his quarterback coach Greg Holcomb on the show, and then Greg had a whole situation where he went nuclear on Chris Carter, then tried to apologize, and the Vikings I think made him take it down. That was a whole thing. But just like the mechanical stuff here, what's the gap? What is what does it look like it did at Michigan? Does it get out of whack in the full speed of the NFL because you're on a freeway for the first time with this type of speed? What do you make of the mechanical stuff here, Thor?
So first off, I was at the game on Sunday. I was sitting in the lower bowl, was sitting in one of the end zones, which is where I want to sit in football stadiums because you get the all 22 that you don't get on the broadcast view. And I did note a regression. I felt like a little bit with those mechanics, and it's weird because, again, all fingers at JJ, and you wonder, like, this is a correctable thing. This is a coaching thing, and you wonder where the culpability is on that side. right? I mean, what were we doing in the spring, guys? I know he was injured last year. What were we doing early summer? What were we doing in August? You know, he played one preseason series after he missed the season before. There had been a 600-day layoff prior to the opener against Chicago. And now in the season, it does seem a little bit like in that game, it was the first healthy game where I really noticed the wonkiness with that, where you can't really explain it with an injury or getting nicked up or a crumbling pocket immediately, like there was in the first two games with Justin School. I was a little bit disappointed with it, but that being said, it is a correctable thing. And I'm wondering when the coaches are going to kind of get to that. I do think that the part on McCarthy's side is, you know, we've talked about how he gets amped up. What I was noticing on Sunday is you would have like the drop that Addison had down the seam, which could have been a touchdown if he had caught it, right? Then you see JJ, now he starts to press, right? It's like, I'm going to get it all back on this next throw. Then you see him overstride and come over the top and sail someone, right? And then when he would settle back down, it seemed like then there'd be a drop, then he'd start pressing again. And so it's funny because the off target throws, it ended up being the exact same number as the drops. They were both 6. And he had some bad misses. And that, again, frustrating to watch when you're watching, because it's like, dude, just calm down. You can only control what you can control. But yeah, that's a part of it that he needs to mind.
So I disagree a little bit on the blame thing here. Like at least Thor from me. I mean, O'Connell gets blame here. Like there's blame to go around here. And the fact that they misjudged McCarthy a bit, or the fact that they continue to ask things, like it feels like O'Connell is coaching McCarthy in 2027 right now, but we're in 2025. And so he does not, he called a way better game on Sunday than Baltimore, but you still could have run more. There was still a chance to make plays. And it feels as if Kevin, and you can sort of, the thing with him is Kevin O'Connell at the podium comes off as a really good guy. Like, he's nice. He's the anti-Zim, right? But he's a football coach. They have no patience. And you can see it. Like, he's literally calling for JJ to do things based on what he thinks he should do. And, hey, I've taught him this. And then it breaks down and it doesn't work. And O'Connell, to me, the cement drying comment is, I'm running out of patience here, which is funny because you got 7 games left to play, this kid, and then some probably. So I put blame on both sides here. Like, does McCarthy make mistakes? Absolutely. Does O'Connell, has he put him in a situation? But I said this a couple of times. I would like to see them come out at tempo on Sunday. Get him into a rhythm. Like you saw it. You did. He, in the 2-minute drill on Sunday, he was fantastic. Why? Because he can't think. Now, yes. O'Connell doesn't like that because he wants to talk to him until there's 15 seconds left, like McVay did with Jared Goff. And that's what McVay did, and it worked. And so it worked for a while. But I think there's a lot of blame, Phil, to be spread around here. Yes, McCarthy's the lightning rod, but I do not think he is. I don't think he's getting the first-class quarterback whisperer treatment that some of the veterans got.
I think, well, there's a whole nother section of this to like the timing of how long does it take for the cement to dry. But everyone, I think, including Kevin O'Connell, based on some of the body language on the sidelines of the All-22, which Declan will document in a second, everyone is so impatient with this. And a lot of it is self-inflicted by the Vikings and, quite frankly, by shows like ours. A lot of stakeholders thought that this whole thing, the roster and JJ McCarthy, would click more than it has in 2025. And that is a fair criticism of all of the stakeholders. The Vikings for misevaluating their roster. There's been some injuries too that have derailed some things. And the Vikings for misevaluating how long it was going to take for the cement to dry on some of the fundamentals, if not maybe some of the coaching processes. But okay, so it hasn't worked out the way that you thought. That doesn't mean that the whole thing, like, you're still developing a quarterback to be your guy for 10 years. You've determined it didn't click in the first 5 games. All right, well, you got 7 more games this year to try and get that cement to dry. I think you got all year next year too. Like, everyone needs to just kind of take a deep breath on this. It is not, despite the before I die mantra of this show, it is not the end of the world. It doesn't derail the entire blueprint and plan that they aren't going to make the playoffs this year. Maybe there needs to be some accountability held in the front office because of how many missed draft picks they've had. But you're still doing this with JJ McCarthy with an eye toward the long term, the 8 to 10 year arc. And 5 games, 8 games, maybe 15 games doesn't necessarily tell the entire story. It takes time.
I mean that's what it is, and it's a coach in Kevin O'Connell who obviously washed out of the NFL quick. Playing quarterback, he was a 3rd-round pick of New England, had to play behind Tom Brady, and he had a lot of thoughts coming out of that about development of players, right? Like Moneyball. Everyone's seen the movie Moneyball. Billy Beane was a really high draft pick, I think, by the Twins, right, Judd? That was before
Mets.
my time.
Mets.
The Mets, he got
Or
traded
the Mets.
there.
Okay.
Didn't work out.
Yeah.
But, Billy Beane, he flames out. He was this, 5-tool, whatever, however they say it in baseball, prospect. And then he got all sorts of ideas about how to evaluate players and sort of came at it, at a different angle that helped him to moneyball an advantage against the rest of the teams in baseball. And you're wondering with O'Connell, and we don't get to see behind the scenes. Some of the public comments I have found kind of odd, during that month and a half when McCarthy was out and continuing to talk about mechanics as opposed to the injury. And I don't think he was out on the practice field. So it's like, why are you harping on this, or the missed practice, or the stuff with the body language on Sunday, or the stuff of everyone else is doing great except for JJ? I don't think that's true. Like, it's like, man, is this is the kind of developmental environment that you would have wanted to be in, Kevin? This would have changed it for you? I don't know.
I think there's an important thing here, though, is again, to go inside the mind of O'Connell. I think there's a very important thing here. To your point, and he's talked about it endlessly, he was a 3rd-round draft pick who's convinced in his heart, his mind, he was not developed correctly. Now, perhaps he couldn't play. I got no clue. But he's sort of convinced that he got done wrong, okay? Which is ironic considering what's presently transpiring. But that being said, so I think the mechanics thing, I think the conversation, I think the patience starting to wear thin also comes from this. Don't forget, you guys, his life's work as a coach. I mean, clearly that's a lot of his self-worth, which is fine. But it has been as what? A guy that has become known as being one of the top quarterback whisperers, right? Taking quarterbacks and developing them. So if you start to now say, well, you know what, guys, I sort of screwed this one up so far. I've not done a good job. That's his ego. That's his life. So I think that there is a definite, like, he took Darnold, bang. Cousins, statistically, might have gone down. Record-wise, as far as a quarterback, went up. So this is a tough one, I think, for Kevin, because I don't think he knows how to handle this one yet. And again, go through his press conferences and find the amount of times where he has said, not I take responsibility. That's the PJ Fleck line. I take responsibility for everything. Find where he has self-analyzed and criticized something he has done in particular. Bad play calls. Bad. I honestly thought, and I told Phil and Dex this on the show, Thor. I don't think it was on a Thorsday. But I honestly thought after the Chargers debacle, right? And Carson Wentz, like screaming in agony. I mean, that was awful. I honestly thought that he would go and say, you know what? I went back and watched the film. I should have taken the poor guy out. I did wrong by him. I'm sorry. But he doubled down. He doubled down completely. And that's who he is. And so I think he's having a very hard time, you guys, accepting the fact that this right now is not having the results that they thought. And I think it's a very difficult situation for him. And he's what, 40, 41? He's still a young guy. I think it's a very difficult thing for him to accept that this isn't firing near the cylinders that they expected.
Yeah, I got a general response, and then I got a more game-specific one to what you said, Jed. The first general one is I've heard inside that building that is more of a finger-pointing culture than people would think on the outside. So I do think that there is validity to this. I think that this is a subject worth exploring. So I wanted to say that. And then the game-specific thing, talking about the up-tempo and O'Connell being in the helmet, and you think about, some of these stories that we've heard about O'Connell, that you pick up Dobbs off the street and a couple of days later you're winning. And and O'Connell's talking about how he narrated him through the whole game in the helmet thing. Last year, it was a big national story that every single pre-snap that O'Connell was talking to Darnold up until the millisecond that they cut that microphone off. And with McCarthy, you already have this situation where we got a lot of cooks in the kitchen and then the public discourse, right? And there's all these voices around him, change this, change that, do this, do that, do this. And in practice, you're working with McCone, right? Like you work with your position coaches in practice. And then in game day, it's Kevin wanting to get into a fully furnished, a car and then just drive really, really fast, right? It's like, okay, now I'm going to get in that headset and we're going to lead this team to a win or whatever. And I just think it's a lot for the kid with all the different voices. And now O'Connell 1 day a week is coming in, do this, do this, do this, do this. And it did seem like that last drive that McCarthy was kind of freed from that for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, there's definitely a case to be made for increasing the amount of time that you go into up-tempo if that's what makes McCarthy just more comfortable and gets him out of his head, mechanically sound. I want to throw it to Dex here as part of this. What are people saying about McCarthy? Because so JT O'Sullivan runs the QB School YouTube channel and does quarterback breakdowns for a bunch of different games all week. He has a bunch more content behind his Patreon paywall. So if you're not already consuming that content on a regular basis, it's really good. But what are like 2 or 3 of the main takeaways, Dex? You watched the entire 40-minute or whatever it was, 50-minute breakdown yesterday. Hour and a half.
Yeah.
Straight into your veins yesterday. Football. What are 2 or 3 of the biggest takeaways from what JT O'Sullivan is saying about JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, Thor hinted at this a little bit. I think the number one thing that stood out to me, and maybe I'm being a little too nitpicky, but I didn't notice this because you don't see it when you're watching the game. And Judd's at the stadium, so Judd take the field glasses out the next home game just to really hone in on this. The body language by the head coach and Kevin O'Connell when JJ misses a throw or maybe does something he doesn't want to do is kind of shocking. Like hands up out of the air. I'm all for a coach who is playing and coaching an animated sport that this is an emotional investment, and not trying to say you have to be completely stoic, stone-faced every time of any high or low. But it's pretty shocking to see your head coach visibly putting his arms up.
Dude, he would have got O-line committee would have given him the palms up fine about 10 times in that game.
And look, JJ and Thor has talked about this forever, that like he's a hyper-competitive athlete. He thrives in these type of scenarios if his back's against the wall. But this kid's 22 trying to get his confidence up. And the last thing you're doing, and when you're a quarterback, also going back and rewatching film, one of the things you're looking at is not just the play and the all 22 of, I should have done this, could have done that, should have ran this route. You're looking at the coach. And if the coach is visibly going, what the heck, and putting his arms up all over the place, not exactly like great for a young quarterback trying to get confidence. And so that was by far, I think, actually, and there's things mechanically that I could get into that still go over my head a little bit as a football film junkie novice, but that was the biggest thing to me that stood out.
That's fascinating, man. Yeah, Thor, go ahead.
Yeah, like, yes, that was there with the McCarthy throws. Just for the smallest benefit of the doubt to O'Connell, he did that as well with missed blocks, and I think he does
all the time.
Yeah, like
it's his default.
Yeah, and so it's not just McCarthy, but like it really jumps out when you're supposed to be the guy who is shepherding this guy's development, and he misses a pass, and all you're throwing your hands up with the play sheet in your hand. Like, it's like, dude, you can't do that. You just can't. Like, we all want coaches with emotion, like we don't want, a guy that doesn't have a pulse. So down with that, but like that's going to come across as showing up your players, and especially the young quarterback who looks at you like a father figure. Like, remember the combine where he went up to O'Connell and was like, I will run through a wall for you. And he said, that's only the second or third coach I've ever told that to, Harbaugh obviously being one of them. And Jim Harbaugh and JJ McCarthy had that father-son relationship. And I think he's looking at O'Connell like that as well. Whereas O'Connell, it seems like he's off in his own world, and then he can get frustrated on game day and sort of have that come out, or get frustrated at the podium and sort of have that come out, and it's just something that I think maybe Kevin should think through.
Question for Judd real quick here. What would you say, because I can already hear, I don't know what percentage of it, of fans or listeners of this right now saying, well, I was throwing my hands up too when he's airmailing Jefferson over here, or there was one play that I saw
totally fair.
where Jordan Addison is coming across. So JT O'Sullivan explained that on the really bad miss short to Addison, that's more of a clear out route for the Jefferson coming across the field.
Yeah.
And you're probably supposed to hit Jefferson coming across the field there. McCarthy chose to go a little bit deeper to Addison, and he either threw it short or Addison was supposed to cut that route across more. Either way, like miscommunication or bad throw. And so all of that in a stew, and Kevin O'Connell's, it's either accuracy, a bad read, a bad route, all the things. And O'Connell is flinging the play chart like up in the air. But fans are saying, yeah, guys, he's missing receivers by 100 yards. I would be mad too.
First of all, the inside word on that particular play was it worked in practice to perfection with Jordan catching the ball like 5 times.
Okay.
So like that play had worked in practice all week, and O'Connell was exasperated because he's like, that play worked all week and now the ball wasn't thrown correctly. And but this is a really fair question because I can hear people, rightfully so, saying, you 4 jokers right now are bashing Kevin O'Connell for this. This quarterback sucks. Why, you're looking for excuses. Now Thor is trying to get in your heads. And I'll say it this way, okay? JJ McCarthy, at the end of the day, might be a bust. I don't know. Quarterbacks bust all the time. But the reality is you've got 7 games left. You had 8 on Sunday. You now have to figure out the best way in 28 quarters of football to help him out as much as possible. You have to help him out as much as possible. You have to find out, is he a bust or are you just asking so much that you're ruining him by asking too much, which I think is a conversation here. So there are things. Look, I mean, some of that on Sunday was awful. And his inability to take some of the fastball off his passes is a real problem. And his inability now that you can see crystal clear what they were talking about when they say he struggles to layer in passes is a problem. All of these things are problems. Okay, we know that. So the question becomes this. He's the 10th overall pick in a draft. How do you help him, not from saying, well, you got to learn this now. How do you help him and get him to a place where you can spend these 7 games getting him, I think, Thor, that this is a fair statement, getting him to make enough progress that you feel good about where it's going. It's not to say he's a finished product by the end of the Green Bay game in January. This is to say, though, you need to find a way. It's up to you to find out what can you get from him to make him get to a point where you say, you know what, there's something here. And that's where if we were just to say he's a bust, he's just a bust. It's 5 games. He's terrible. What good does that do anybody, including Kevin O'Connell? It's very important that I think you spend these next 7 games helping him progress. And if that means going at tempo, 2-minute drill at times, that's what you should do at times. Not saying you do it a whole game. But that's what these are the discussions that they have to be having in TCO.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, and you want to see progress, and let me say this as well, because I've been critical of O'Connell with a couple of these different things. Again, I was in the building on Sunday. I was getting frustrated. It's like, bro, settle down, like tranquilo. Like you can't. There are things that you can't affect, and there are things that you can. And the frustrating part, watching McCarthy in that game was I felt like things outside of his control were starting to bleed into the things that were. We saw the mechanical stuff, the overstriding, the base too wide, a couple of those throws to the left. We talked about this in his pre-drop process. When he turns the body, going to the left, and he does the full throw over there, you don't see that. But like when he doesn't, and then it's that exaggerated swing, and then he kicks the leg out and stuff like that. These are things that, obviously McCarthy, he has to work on it. It has to improve. I don't think that thing is going to be totally 100% fixed till the off season. I don't know why there wasn't more emphasis on this in camp and leading up to now, but we're here now. And obviously that needs to get fixed. But yeah, I don't want to absolve, and I'm not absolved. I mean, go back and read my tweets from Sunday. I was very frustrated, and I viewed that as a regression an unfortunate regression for McCarthy. Healthy in the NFL, those were the worst, couple quarters that I had seen him play. As far as pressing, as far as letting the mechanics start to go and letting it rip. I was very encouraged the end of that game, that last drive, that he did seem to get out of his head. And not only that, the receiving corps seemed to get more on the same page, and they ended up driving down. And very unfortunate the Vikings didn't end up winning that game, because that was sort of the game-winning drive that wasn't. And obviously a lot of frustration there on the failed coverage on Duvernay, where you kick it, from your angle to the right corner, and then literally all he does is run to the other side of the field. There's only one dude over there. We probably should direct some criticism at Matt Daniels. It's like, bud, Ivan Pace, there was one other dude on that side. I was watching that thing back, that kick return, over and over again. The two other guys on the inside of the right dude, they immediately get sucked down. It was so easy to block that thing, and then you just had the Red Sea.
Eric Wilson had to come clear across the field from the right side to go get him.
Yeah.
So frustrating.
Yeah, it was. Because if they make a tackle there early before the 30-yard line, there's a really good chance they just win the game, and the lasting impression is this feel-good moment. I have a couple just responses off what you guys just talked about. But I just want to remind the audience that this is not only Give to the Max week, it is officially Give to the Max day here today, and in the state of Minnesota. And we have put our efforts behind a great platform called The Bond Between, which helps to essentially save and rescue dogs and cats. They've rescued over 30,000 dogs and cats. You can see our dogs on the YouTube channel there. Vinny and Stella and Barney and Maya. But we're looking to raise money for pets who need it and for pet owners who need it. And if we get to $3,000 this week, Nutrisource will match it. So we ask $5, $50, if you have $500, whatever you feel like you can donate. If you love animals, scorenorth.com/donate. That's scorenorth.com/donate. Judd's going to be donating his body to Padres sometime later in life. Yeah,
that's a great idea. That's fantastic. You know what? No, in actuality, this weekend, a big football weekend, and Sports Dad's thinking, how am I going to spend it? And then I realized I'm going to spend it on the couch, sipping on a Padres, which is absolutely outstanding. Now, I'm probably going to go with the red, but the array of beers from Padres, including the Patty's Premium, a great Sessions beer, all of them fantastic. Their beer available now in more than 200 liquor stores in the metro area, Rochester and Mankato, or check them out. Their location at the old Land Nod Factory at the corner of Broadway and Central Avenues Northeast. A football Saturday, a football Sunday, and Padres. Going to tell you right now, Sports Dad approved.
Speaking of football, on all those days, you can win money if you open the Prize Picks app watching football on those days here. So Justin Jefferson right now on Prize Picks for the game in Green Bay listed at 69.5 receiving yards. Jordan Addison just 39.5 receiving yards. It's kind of tempting me to hit
Phil, that's
more
drops.
on that.
That's drops.
Wow. By the way, JJ McCarthy's receivers have gifted him a 14% drop rate, which is the highest of any quarterback so far this year. So
by 3.5%, by the way, of guys with over 150 dropbacks. The next highest, I think it's 11.4, something like that.
It's really bad. So he's got to be more accurate, and they have to catch more passes. It's all in a stew. They don't have drops on here, I don't think, on Prize Picks. Maybe in a dark corner somewhere that Thor knows about, but you select between 2 and 6 players. It's a very quick process. If you want it to be, you pick more or less on their stats. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use that code PURPLEDAILY and get $50 in lineups when you play $5. That's code PURPLEDAILY. You can help the show when you do that too. And get $50 in lineups when you play just $5. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. So, the drops thing is interesting. I would also say, in the spirit of putting a quarterback in the right spot to succeed, he still averages JJ McCarthy by about a yard per throw over the second place ADOT candidate. Average depth of target. How far do you throw the ball to your intended target on average per throw? JJ McCarthy, the number one highest average depth of target, almost 11 yards per target. Aaron Rodgers is half that, by the way, at the bottom of this list. Jared Goff, McCarthy is 50% higher ADOT than Jared Goff. So some of this is, all right, is he just like hunting for the furthest corners of the route tree? Or is this being designed this way? Because one of the things that I felt like was apparent on that final drive, they're going tempo, he's not thinking as much, but also he's focused on getting completions. And a lot of those completions were, hey, there's a running back right here, there's TJ Hawkinson there's a quick one to Jefferson. It was snap, quick, ball out, not 15, 20 yards down the field, except for that Naylor throw that pulled him into the red zone. But I'd like to see either with McCarthy on his reads or Kevin O'Connell on what he's asking McCarthy to do. Let's line up some shorter passes. So far this year, on passes that travel 20 or more yards in the air, McCarthy's just 23% completions. Just forget about those. Maybe like 2 a game. Right now, not ready for that. Whatever. Let's just get rid of that. And let's focus on where he excelled in college a lot too, was that intermediate, those over the middle, tight end, wide receiver crossing routes. He's hitting those at close to a 60% completion percentage, those medium depth throws. So that's wild to me that he's averaging the furthest throw of any quarterback in the NFL. Why? That seems pretty senseless to me.
Yeah, and I think a part of the function is the throwing deep on the third and shorts, and you don't have as much of a sample size because, obviously McCarthy had missed the games, and then, there's been a couple games where he didn't attempt as many passes. I think that's part of the function of it. But a part of the function of it as well, and this is a part of the reason that I liked McCarthy, particularly thinking about it from a Vikings prism of having survived the Kirk Cousins era, was the thing that frustrated me the most about Kirk Cousins was I viewed him as an empty calorie stack guy, where you would constantly see him checking down on 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12, so he could get a free completion and 6 more yards on the ledger with a losing football play. Whereas McCarthy will throw it past the sticks every time, and sometimes past the guy's head, past the sticks, but he is going to hunt downfield, and he's going to take those chances. And he's got the arm for it, obviously.
Yeah. 1.5 more things from the JT O'Sullivan QB school thing that also stood out to me. We talked about the mechanics. Thor mentioned the footwork. JT went into great detail about how new quarterbacks are being taught rotational versus linear lower halves, which is why you see the JJ McCarthy that's right, baby. You see the almost like pitcher-like follow-through with his leg, not his arm. With his leg.
His leg's flying up. My leg's
flying up. Oh, that's his leg?
Well.
Oh, that's your leg.
Yeah, his
okay.
leg's flying up. I'm all over the map.
Which creates just such of a longer throw and can cause obviously, inaccurate stuff there. But also, and Thor was in the building. We saw this too. And it's so easy, by the way, to when you watch all 22 for an hour and a half like this and you see it at slow speed, it is very easy to dissect and pick apart things that aren't happening at game speed and aren't happening in the moment. But McCarthy is about a half second late on those anticipatory throws, on throws that he needs to get the ball out a little quicker. Can KOC coach him up or not coach him up, because I kind of wanted to take the gloves or kind of rein it in a little bit. Can he make life easier for him? For sure. However, he needs to be just a little bit quicker with his throws and his decisions. And I like that JT said at the end, I don't understand, and O'Sullivan just likes watching quarterback play. I don't understand the amount of fire and vitriol that I see from Vikings Twitter and from other NFL analysts about JJ McCarthy. This is it great? No. But is it as bad as the perception and people are making out to be? We are nowhere near that. And I take a lot of stock when a former NFL quarterback who, breaks this stuff down for a living says something like, if he said he's cooked, I would honestly take a lot more stake in that. If he's trying to say, let's give this guy some time here before we jump to a ridiculous conclusion, I think that's pretty important.
And Declan, your point, there was times, of course, where McCarthy probably should have fired it earlier. O'Sullivan, I seen that video, his breakdown too. O'Sullivan does a really good job. There was also a couple instances where McCarthy was throwing the anticipatory thing. The ball was out of his hands as the receiver was getting into the route break or right before it. Right. And O'Sullivan, there was a couple of them where it was like the misfire ones where O'Sullivan was wondering aloud, did the receiver break at the correct depth? Because McCarthy, the ball was out of his hand before that, and then, these are like downfield throws. There was the one out to the left sideline where it came short. I forgot who the intended target was, but where it looked badly off, and it might have been. I don't, and O'Sullivan was saying that too. Like, I don't know what the route run or if they told him to get flat here or they told him to sort of angle it. But if it was flat, that throw would have been an anticipatory dime. But because he angles it up, it's badly off. And again, we don't know. I'm not saying, just like O'Sullivan was, we don't know. But the other point I wanted to make off that, and to McCarthy's quote about the cork, being close to popping off the bottle, the other frustrating aspect of the Chicago game was just how close they were to oodles more yards and oodles more points, between the drops, between the errant throws. But I thought the offensive line played as well as I have seen this season. Zero complaints about that. They played really, really well. Obviously, they're getting healthy and might even have Ryan Kelly back this weekend. But with the way Brendel's playing, he might be a long-term center. We'll have to see about that. But offensive line played really well. I thought O'Connell, for all the criticism I gave earlier this episode, I thought it was his best call game of the season. I love the way that he mixed the run game with the pass game, the way that those things were melding together. I like some of the easy looks that he gave for JJ. There was that one on the tight end screen that was really well executed by Hawkinson, and the timing of it was there and everything like that. You had stuff like that going on. McCarthy it's getting close, right? I mean, like you tweak some of those, you polish off some of the mechanical things just a little bit. What I in the moment thought some of that stuff was pressing, you take some of that off, you take away some of those errant throws, and then if you can mitigate the drops by the receiving core as well in conjunction with that, you would have ran into so many points and yards in that one. And I understand why O'Connell's frustrated. Because he more than anyone understands, like, man, we had the opportunity for 400 plus offensive yards here, and who knows how many points, and it's just not quite there. I think it's a lot closer than people are thinking right now.
I'm taking notes here too, because I think so. In the deconstruction of how McCarthy is playing right now, I think there are some things that are long-term concerns and need to be coached out or coached in, but then there's other things that I think in these last 7 games can be worked on, because I do think that there's some major stuff. You want him to fix it, but here's the problem: he's going to get worse the more he thinks. So if I'm trying to make major fixes on Sunday in Green Bay, guess what I'm doing? I'm paralyzing him, because now he's got to think about the pass. And why does the pass come out late? Because I'm thinking about things. The first thing is the footwork, okay? And I'm going to go back to another guy with a cannon for an arm, a freaking cannon. His name was Brett Favre. You go back and watch film of Favre. Watch him plant to throw, because you know what? He broke fingers. So like, we can talk all we want about if the ball is there. I understand it might be hot, okay? But the problem with McCarthy is, in my opinion, is the footwork often causes him to overthrow guys with a cannon throw. They can't catch it. If you go back and look at Favre, he would literally plant himself. He would watch him right before he throws. He would plant and throw. What did it do? It brought the ball down. It was still a cannon. It broke guys' hands, but who cares? They caught the ball. The other thing, and this is a work in progress as well, and O'Connell's complained about it, and he's right. And it needs to be ironed out. And it might be the most important thing. It's JJ's ability in the pocket and how he climbs the pocket now. There were a couple plays I saw live, and Thor, you might have seen the same thing at the stadium on Sunday, where JJ literally looks like for lack of a better term, you guys, a shot putter. He runs to make a throw. So he doesn't climb the pocket. He explodes through it. And that's where you get into big trouble, because you're going to hit a guy like you literally have. And Phil, I'm sure that Boone and Searles talk about this. Like, it's not like you got all this room, right? Like, the pocket is sort of a condensed thing. And so guys get pushed back a little bit. So I'm going to give you a second, but it's going to be, as O'Connell said, muddy. And there were times when JJ gets a running start almost and launches, and he runs into guys, or the throw sails. So these are all things that can be worked on, but I think they can be fixed. That's my thing. That's my thing. But the most important thing now is you gotta, in my opinion, pick and choose what you're gonna fix, Thor. It cannot be, we're gonna go into Green Bay on Sunday and we're gonna have everything. You need to be perfect. It's not gonna work. So this is where O'Connell's patience becomes absolutely key. And I would say this: pick 1 or 2 things and focus on those in game. and I told Chip this, and it sounds hilarious because Kevin O'Connell will hate what I'm about to say, but it's true. New coaches talk about process over results, right? You can no longer, for these last 7 games, in my opinion, if you want to give this the best shot of working, care about the result. It needs to be
Of the
processed.
result of the game,
The game.
or the result of a play?
The result of the game. The game comes in second to the process.
100%. And yeah,
Smoke that one, huh?
and you know, yeah, I think it's worth O'Connell thinking through, like, you know, the thing of talking in the helmet. And I understand with Darnold it worked, with Dobbs it worked. I don't remember the stories about Cousins in the helmet, but I understand, like, the impetus for O'Connell to be like, well, this is my, you know, young prodigy guy, and I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm, you know, talk him down, you know, until we get to that moment, so he's prepared for the next play. So I understand the impetus, but I remember a talk that you got Luke Kuechly. Y'all remember Luke Kuechly, the Panther linebacker?
One of the smartest football players of our generation.
That he had given, where he talked about the most important thing on an NFL field, it's the preparation you did before it. And he said, the reason that I was in the film room so much and studying the opponent so much was because when I went out on Sunday, I wanted to be free. He's like, the guys who always played down, it was because they had to think of, like, oh, this formation coming out, what could they be running? And the look right after the snap, you're still trying to sort of do it in your head. Kuechly had all that stuff figured out because he had done all the film work from the team. So if he saw him come out in 12 personnel and maybe that, you know, and then all of a sudden the play starts out this, he knows where it's going, right? And so he could just free himself. And I do think it's worth the Vikings considering is all this sensory input that we're throwing at McCarthy throughout the week, and then down to 15 seconds on the play clock or whatever, where there's just always voices in his head telling, do this, do that, do this. Can we cut that down and maybe simplify it a little bit? And Judd, to your point, can we do 2 or 3 things in this game that we're going to focus on, but then otherwise go out there and try to play as free as you can?
Yeah, man, Jeremiah on O-line committee tells legendary stories about Luke Kuechly, and Booney ran into him as an offensive lineman too, where Luke Kuechly would come down in the box and literally he'd survey the offensive line, walks up to the ball and starts to get in their stances, and he'd say screen to the left, and they'd be like, oh, how do you know that? What's happening?
He was the Peyton Manning of linebackers, and I thought his explanation for why was just so fascinating, right? It's not to be like the know-it-all or the teacher pet or like whatever. It's literally so he can be free on Sunday. What Luke Kuechly is saying is, I did all the thinking the 6 days before that, so I would think this much on Sunday. And I could just run around. It was all the answers were in my head in advance. So then he could just fly around. He could go and hit people.
Yeah. Hey, we do have there's at least one Ask Thor Anything question that has nothing to do with quarterback that I would love to throw out. It's about a different position that the Vikings may be hunting for in the draft here. So we'll get to that before the show's over. Game Day Men's Health powering this Thorsday episode. And I've been telling you guys now for the last 3 months about my, to steal a word from Kevin O'Connell, journey with Game Day Men's Health, modern men's healthcare. I have so much more energy, so much more clarity mentally in terms of like mental fog being gone than I did middle of the afternoon 3 months ago, thanks to my now friends at Game Day Men's Health, where they provide solutions for guys. If you're 35, 40 years old, I just turned 40. I'm a man. I'm 40. And maybe you are a little bit, it's harder to get the weight off. Maybe your energy is down. Maybe you're suffering from ED, whatever it may be. My sleep scores are the best I have seen in the 6 or 7 years I have measured the last 3 months, thanks to Game Day Men's Health. From the moment you walk in, you will notice a difference. It's not your classic clinic vibe. Locations in Edina, Minnetonka. And if you mention Purple Daily, you get a free vitamin shot at your first visit, in addition to a free T-test consultation. So tell them Purple Daily sent you. Tell them I sent you in at GameDayMen'sHealth.com/Purple Daily. GameDayMen'sHealth.com/Purple Daily. SeatGeek also powering this episode of Purple Daily.
Yeah, go download the SeatGeek app. Okay. Purple 10 for 10% off any tickets with that promo code. Whether you're trying to see the Vikings on the road, you want to see them back here at US Bank Stadium, you're making your first trip up to US Bank, Purple 10 for 10% off any tickets. Plus, they have discounts on not just sporting events, but concerts and Broadway shows and so many different things. So if you're looking for tickets to your next event, we got a little nice little plug for you here. Purple 10, 10% off. Go download the SeatGeek app. It's available in the App Store and the Google Play Store.
And a shout out to Park Dental. Park Dental has been my dentist of choice the last couple years. Over 50 years, Park Dental has been caring for and cleaning teeth in Minnesota and Western Wisconsin. And there's likely a location within just minutes of wherever you live or work in the Twin Cities. Most of the practices have very flexible hours, open until 8 p.m. at least one night a week. Many practices open at 7 a.m. So shout out to Park Dental, parkdental.com, the official dentist of Purple Daily. All right. Ask Thor anything. Let's check in with, who is this emailer? Let me give him proper credit here. This is from Josh Salvino. Says, if I may throw a name out there that I'm very high on in the draft 2026, but I'd like your opinion on him. Jeremiah Love, running back, Notre Dame. Wake up the echoes. I would love to see the Vikings draft Jeremiah Love, but feel his talent would get wasted until Kevin O'Connell committed more to running the football. Your thoughts, Thor, on Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame running back?
This is a really funny question because my last column at Fantasy Life, the place I'm coming from, was a mock draft earlier this week. And I had this same predicament or same thought. Jeremiah Love was still on the board when the Vikings came up in my mock exercise. And I did not give Jeremiah Love to the Vikings. I gave him a cornerback instead, Avion Terrell, AJ Terrell's brother. Avion also goes to Clemson. A guy that I think is a great scheme fit, and I think the Vikings desperately need another starting boundary corner. But I had Love going the next pick to Dallas. Right now, the way it lines up, the Vikings would have the 12th pick if the draft was tomorrow. The Cowboys would have the 13th pick. But that is what I wonder. If the Vikings have a top 12 pick, right, or top 10 pick, and then they have access to Jeremiah Love, I think a lot of the fan base is going to want Jeremiah Love. I don't, especially with the coach that you have, and some of the other holes that you have, I don't know that it's the smartest thing. I mean, how frustrating would it be if you spend a top 10 pick on a running back with some of the other holes on the roster, and then he gets 10 carries a game or 9 carries a game or 8 carries a game, right? And you still have a big hole, in the secondary or a couple big holes. Yeah. But as far as Jeremiah Love's game, I like it a lot. There's been comps to Reggie Bush, USC era Reggie Bush, and I don't think they're too far off. Jeremiah Love, very similar frame. He's 6 foot, 210 pounds, and he's an amazing athlete, just like Bush. 4.3 speed. He has the burst, the acceleration. He's going to jump over 40 inches. Jeremiah Love is in Indianapolis this spring. So you see that explosion. And another thing I appreciate about Jeremiah Love is this year he's proven to be a good receiver. They're using him further down the field. He's made some really sick catches down the field. Some like Aaron Jones type stuff. Sending him on the wheel route down the sideline and different stuff like this. I just wonder with this coaching staff if that would be a smart delineation of resources, because to get Jeremiah Love, you're going to have to use a top 12, 13, 14 kind of a pick on him. And I just don't know if that would be the right usage of resources for the Vikings, even though I think Love is a dynamic talent for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's kind
difficult
of
to hear that though. I get your point, but I mean, it's difficult to hear that you think that an explosive player on offense might not play the right position to be used by the play caller. I don't love hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're going to use a top 12 pick, right, and it's going to be on a running back in this case, he not only do you have to be convinced that this guy's a stud and he's going to be a stud right away, you really have to use him to get analogous value. For instance, for a starting boundary corner, or another position the Vikings could end up taking, or interior defensive line. If there's a stud there. So all these questions, in this case, it would be Jeremiah Love against this guy. It would require a little bit of a philosophical shift on O'Connell's part, I think, to make that pick worth the squeeze. Even though I do agree he, is going to be a top 15 pick.
They have so many draft picks. Let's say you're right that it just, with the system and Kevin O'Connell's ethos and whatnot, that first round doesn't make sense for running back. what kind of depth at running back is in this draft if you were to look a little bit further down. And as you maybe gather your thoughts on that, one thing anecdotally to me that stands out is the Vikings just don't have that explosive home run threat at that position. They'll get you an 8-yard gain or a 15-yard gain, but they don't have like the 65-yard, the old Dalvin Cook. If you block this right, we're breaking a 54-yard touchdown run on this play. And that is a golf club in the Vikings bag that we had around here with Adrian Peterson for years and Dalvin Cook. And it just, even with like fewer attempts, that threat of a home run rushing perfectly blocked play does not really exist right now.
Yeah, to your point, this running back class is not nearly as good as the last one. Last spring we talked all spring about, that it was a potentially historic running back class, at least in terms of the depth. The draft is cyclical. Position groups, the quality of them, if one is really, really good one year, almost always it is bad the next year. If deep, then it's going to be thin the next year. It's just kind of the way that it works out. There are guys that I'm interested in and more in the value range that I think the Vikings would consider one. I, as you guys know, argued till I was blue in the face that the Vikings should take at least one running back in the last class. I still believe that. But since they didn't, you still have a vacancy at RB3. And if Jones and Mason are back on the roster next year, I think you should use that spot to try to develop someone or a platoon back that has at least, one good skill. I'll toss a couple names at you. One that is going to be available, this guy probably going to go 4th or 5th round, probably maybe 5th, depends on the way he tests, but it's a local kid, Emmett Johnson from Nebraska. Emmett Johnson is not a great, I do not expect him to test as an elite athlete, but he's very skilled and he can handle a workload. You can keep him out there on passing downs. Nebraska really likes him as an efficiency player, and they've built the offense around Emmett Johnson. So that's a guy that I think you could get later on if you waited. Another one that could be interesting depending on how far he falls. And I've made fun of this guy because the one thing he lacks is vision. But if you don't, which is a big one for running backs, but if you use him in a situation specific way, I think you could derive value out of him if you get him at a discount. That's Nicholas Singleton from Penn State. I was just talking about Jeremiah Love. He's 6 foot 210. I have a 4.32 40 on Jeremiah Love. Nicholas Singleton, he's 6 foot and a half, 218 pounds, 4.35 speed. Nicholas Singleton is an absolutely amazing athlete, and he also can make plays down the field as a receiver. He lost a lot of playing time this year to Katron Allen because Nicholas Singleton behind the line of scrimmage, he just doesn't see this stuff developing. You see him running into the offensive lineman's back too often. But if Nicholas Singleton, because of that, ends up falling to day 3, you would have a buy low opportunity on a guy who is a legitimate world-class athlete, who will step into the NFL as he would be one of the certainly 10 best athletes at the running back position in the NFL the second that he begins. From a size, speed, athleticism, everything sort of molded together, just measurables there. So that would be someone that I would consider as well.
Football.
And just to quantify this point, and then we'll say goodbye and see you guys at the Purple Daily Unplugged event at B-Dubs in Roseville tonight, 6 o'clock. But since Dalvin Cook left, and he wasn't quite the same guy in 2022, because didn't KO have 1 year of Dalvin in 22, right? His first year, Dalvin was still here, I think, if I remember right.
Yep, he was.
And then so the last 3 years, post Dalvin Cook, only one other team has fewer 20-yard rushes, explosive, or maybe 15 is explosive. I just moved the needle to 20. So like the Ravens have Lamar Jackson, so that's kind of unfair. But the Indianapolis Colts, for example, mostly just running the football in the traditional way with Jonathan Taylor, have 41 rushing plays the last 3 years of 20 or more. The Vikings have 14. The Vikings only have, let me see here, one rushing touchdown of 20 or more yards in the last 3 seasons. There are teams that have 13, 11, 10. I mean, the freaking Dolphins have 10. The Arizona Cardinals have 10. Kyler Murray probably has a couple, but they can't hit that home run on the ground even in the lack of attempts, like you'd think that if you had the right personnel in place, you could hit a home run once in a while. They don't hit that home run.
And unfortunately, part of the problem too is the head coach is not patient enough to take multiple swings.
Pound.
Yeah, exactly
bam,
right.
there it is.
Like
yeah.
The smartest thing, it was frustrating to watch at the time, but the smartest thing that Adrian Peterson ever said was famine, feast, right? You lose a yard. You lose 2 yards. Okay, now you're in trouble. And then you run for 75. Well, guess what?
Bang.
You're not.
Yeah.
Like O'Connell he cannot put up with a famine to get to the feast, which is why Thanksgiving's not going to be too happy around the Vikings table.
Wow. Football. Wow, the sports dad
Pretty
coming
good.
in hot.
Trying to help them out. I'm trying to help those guys out.
Oh, there's your Thorsday episode. And Thor, super pumped to have you. Every day is Thorsday on Score North, and we'll have more details
See you tonight.
about what we're going to be launching with Thor. That's right. Welcome aboard, buddy.
Let's go. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, for
go.
Thor, for the sports dad, for Dex, I'm Phil. See you tomorrow on Purple Daily.